Hey everyone, it's your average chess player here. Today we are gonna look at an endgame position. I've been doing endgame videos in my channel for a while now, and yeah, here I am with yet another endgame position for you to solve. So please feel free to pause the video here. It's White's turn to play, and we need to figure out if White is gonna be winning this endgame or is it just a draw. So yeah, feel free to pause the video and try to find the solution. You could if you did find a solution that you're happy with, you could feel free to skip ahead towards the end of the video. I will leave some timestamps in the description, and you could just skip to the solution summary of the solution, and you could check if you're correct. But if you want to go through the video along with me and solve it like step by step and see, like I'm gonna do like what kind of plans I came up with, what were my candidate moves, what are patterns that I observed that then I realized I made mistakes, and then fine tune my lines. You could go through the whole thing with me, or you could just see the solution for yourself and move on. So we're gonna start. Like I said, White's turn to play, and like White has two pawns on the king side and two pawns on the queen side. Black has a pawn each on either side. So what are our plans? That's the first thing we need to ask ourselves in endgames. Here, when I saw this position for the first time, I was like, okay, White can have two plans for a start, which is either use the two pawns to just march them forward and exchange it themselves with this black pawn here and queen one of the pawns, and then try to win the game from there. That was my first plan. My second plan was maybe I can just put my king forward and then capture the pawn on a7 and then just push my pawn and queen it and then win the game from there. So that's the initial two plans that I had for White. And we also have to look at what our opponent is doing. So Black here has, I think, a straightforward plan, and that is just to capture the pawn on g2, capture the pawn on h3, step out of the way of the h pawn, and then just march that pawn forward. That's it. So that's like 1, 2, step away, 3, 4, 5, 6. Black just needs 6 moves to get a queen on the board, and from there it is almost always going to be a draw. That's how the position is. So that's it. That's what we have to start with. So let's start out with our first plan. The plan I had, which is just march these pawns, exchange, get a queen, and see what happens. So I'm gonna start with the move a4. I think both b5 and a4 is gonna lead to the same variations. So I'm just gonna start with a4 with my first plan. That's my first candidate move that I'm gonna have for this. The a4, and then throughout all the variations, we are just gonna look at the same plan for black because that is probably the only plan black has here, which is just to capture the pawn here on g2. I'm gonna play b5, takes on h3, a5, and here black has three options. When I first calculated the variation, I calculated with king g3 because I thought it was just a safe move. In this variation, it is fine, but I'll show you a different variation after this. After which I realized king g3 in all variations does not work. So we'll continue with this line b6. Let's say ab6, ab6, h3, b7, h2, queens and queens. Oh, my bad. That's a check. You cannot queen here. The king g2, and then you have, let's say, queen g8 check. And this is a theoretically drawn position. And the reason being, black can just cocoon themselves in this corner, and there's no real way for the white side to make progress. Like you can keep giving all the checks that you want, but black is just gonna try to move away from the corner and try to queen their own pawn and just keep dancing between these two squares. In fact, these three squares, and we can't do much. Like we can't bring our king forward because this is a black is going to threaten this, and we give a check, and then we have to again come back here because otherwise it's a stalemate, and we're gonna be doing the same thing. uh, I mean, you could play queen e3 here and thinking g2. You still cannot bring your king forward because it's gonna black is gonna queen. So this is a theoretical draw unless our king was closer, like on f3 or f2 or whatever, even g3. We cannot do much here. So let's go back. So our initial plan, just to marching the pawns forward, looks like it's not working. b5 is gonna result in the same variation. So let's go with the second plan that we had, which is just a direct attack on the pawn on a7 with king b7 and just go for it. And we're going to look at the same moves for black. I'm going to take the pawn on a7, king takes here, b5. And here, like I said, initially I played the move king g3 in the previous variation, and I did the same move in this variation when I was calculating. And then I just played b6, h3, b7, h2, queens with a check. I didn't forget it this time. King g2, and I was like, okay, so you know, I have to now start chasing the king, and then the king will again cocoon themselves, and this is probably a draw. But I also realized, oh wait, I have this nice move of queen takes h2, check. Black is forced to take, and now I just play king b7. I can I now have like successfully shielded the black king. They cannot get to my pawn. It's just too many moves. Cannot get through the white king, and I can just queen my pawn. And this is a winning endgame for white. You queen the pawn and then checkmate the black king. I say, okay, so g3 does not work. King g3 does not work. So I also I was curious if king g2 worked, and looks like that didn't work either with the same, with a very similar idea. Both sides can queen their pawns, but then after queen b7, I skewer, and then I take the queen. Same king b7, it's the same structure, right? And you just queen your pawn. So because of that, although this doesn't like directly contribute to the final solution, it is also like for me to learn that, okay, for like I need to figure out the best. This is a good way to figure out the best defense for both sides. And like the best defense for black is king g4, and this is the reason I, in all the other variations I calculated, I always put the king on g4, because I know there's not never going to be a trick with king on like g3 or g2, unless I'm really forced to put my king there. So I'm with king on g4 instead of g3, this variation is a draw. I was excited that I found the solution first, but then I realized, oh no, it's not. So we keep pushing the pawns, queens, and this is a theoretically a draw. Um, the Although like both sides have to play correctly, especially black, because white has an extra pawn. White always has a upper hand here to maybe win this endgame. But this is theoretically a draw, and with the best play, both it will be a draw. Um, some thumb rules to follow here is to not one is to not blunder your, as black is to not blunder your queen, like through a skewer or just leaving it unprotected. And two is never give a check where your opponent is going to block that check with their own queen and give a counter check to your king. That happens quite a lot. I'll just show a sample variation really fast so that we can that is out of the way. Like let's put a move on like a4, check, king a6, check. I'm just gonna move the queens randomly just to get into that position. And here, like you could give a check here or do any number of things. But if you give a check like queen d2, this is losing because white can now play queen b4, blocking this check, but also giving a counter check to your king. And now you're forced to exchange the queens, and now this pawn can queen and win. So if you avoid getting skewered or avoid a situation like this position would usually just turn out to be a draw. So go all the way back. King b7, our second plan, does not work, and now it's a time to come up with a new plan. And I couldn't come up with one initially, so I was like, okay, let me look at what are my legal moves and figure out what my candidate moves are and see if I can come up with a plan from that. So we saw these two like these two moves won't work, and king b7 doesn't work, which leaves us with about six candidate moves that are left. Since we don't have a plan, we don't know which one to make. I initially looked at these three moves. With I didn't calculate them, but I eliminated them immediately. Reason being, since black needs like six moves to queen their pawn, I should not be making any moves that loses the tempo for myself without making black lose a tempo. So king b5 will block my own pawns, so I cannot push them forward as fast as I want. So king b5 is gone. And with c7 and d7, it doesn't align with any of our initial plans, nor does it do much to the position. Um, it doesn't move towards this pawn and capture it as fast as we wanted to. And it is also like moving away from the position, especially away from the black king. So we are losing more tempo. And that's just gonna like result in a draw for sure, because we are losing more tempo. So that eliminates these three moves for me, and which left me with three candidate moves, and yet I still did not have a plan. So here I was just looking at the position, and I was like, okay, if I don't have a plan, I'll just brute force this and try what I can. So I played first. Tried king c5 to see what happens. We put in the same moves for black: king g2, a4, king takes h3, a5, king g4. I didn't want to get into g3 or g2 shenanigans, so just king g4, b5, h3, b6 takes, h2, b7, queens and queens. This is again theoretically a draw. If you follow the same thumb rules, you should successfully be like, defend this position and just get out without losing your queen or losing the game. So I realized, okay, this is a draw, and I was also like, okay, so this is gone, and I will try king d6 just to see what happens. This I soon realized there's something wrong with this position if we go through the same moves. The problem was, although we get two queens on the board, black has queen h2 check, and this immediately breaks the first thumb rule I had, which is not to skewer your queen in these positions. And white loses. It's not even a draw. So that cannot be good. So king d6 doesn't work either, which left me with one move, king d5. So I was like, okay, if none of them work and this position is still winning for white, king d5 must be the only move to win. And I was like, okay, king takes g2. I'll do the same thing with a4. Takes, and king g4, a5, h3. We keep moving. And here I realized I wasted a tempo with d5, king d5. And black can now queen and skewer my pawn, which was supposed to queen, and not even skewer the queen. And this is again losing for white. So is that all that white has? Is this a draw? I couldn't accept that. I'm like, I have four pawns. Like, although you're gonna be capturing a couple of them, I'm two pawns up. How can this be losing? So here's when I realized, okay, like I need to come up with a new plan. Like without a plan, there's no way I can find a winning sequence if it exists. So the first place that I looked at was, since everything else like is a draw for sure immediately, king d5 is the only move that still gives me some flexibility, because technically I'm not losing a tempo, but I need to find what my plan is. So I realized at this point that our initial two plans of just moving the pawns and trying to queen them, moving our king to capture the black pawn on a7 and queening them, although they don't work, I never thought about how do I stop black from executing his own plan, how to just counter black's plan. We just let black have a free hand and do whatever they wanted. So that's when I was like, okay, so I need to bring my king closer to black's king, make them lose a tempo, or make them stop their pawn from queening, or delay it at least, so that I can get a queen on the board first. And One thing to realize is that whenever you have a 2v1 situation like this on any side, the side with the two pawns, those two pawns can work on their own. They can march on their own without the support of the king, and you could queen them by just by themselves. So as soon as I realized all this, I was like, okay, I can play king e4 here. I'm not forced to play a4. A4 is a draw, like or a draw or a loss, as we just saw. I was like, okay, I'll just play king e4 here because I'm gonna bring my king closer to the black king and see what happens. I wanna do something here. I also consider king d4, but king d4 felt like I'm still not coming closer to the king. I'm still going away, which I did not want that. So if my plan is to get closer to the black king and delay, I need to get closer. So king e4. Here, black has a bunch of moves. King f2, has king g3, h2, h1, g3, g1, and everything. The main variation, two moves that I saw, three moves rather that I saw, which I wanted to try was king f1 is it's not a logical move at all, because I can just play king f4, and if you want to come back, you can come back. But then I capture this pawn. You can do whatever you want, and now I queen this pawn. I don't even care about the queen side. So king f1 is anything stepping away from the pawn looked odd. So black would not want to do that. Black also would not want to do something like king g3, which is now wasting a tempo, right? Um, and again, it felt really odd. Like, why would you waste a tempo in this position when I can play a4 or something? And what is the plan? You're gonna play king takes h3, then that actually takes us to the my initial line that I had with an additional tempo. My initial line, after king e4 was, if not for all these time wasting moves, was to just go with the existing plan that we had for black, which is just king takes h3. And as soon as I saw the black king in front of the pawn, I was like, okay, let me play king f3. This is interesting because now black's king is ahead of his pawn and blocking its own progress, and we can play king f3 to prevent the black king from coming stepping out of the pawn's way to queen the pawn. Although the pawn is just three moves away from queening, and black's king is just one square, like has to move one square on this side. So black kind of needs just four moves to queen, but black cannot do it, at least not yet. And now we are free to start moving our pawns. So this plan, it looks like it will work. So let's see what is black's best defense here. Black wants to escape this, go to g1 and try to queen. That's what black is wanting to try. So let's play king h2, because playing anything like a6 or something, I can just play a4 and exchange. So eventually you have to play king h2. So black need not commit this pawn yet, so can play king h2. Now initially I thought a move like just a4 will work, because if black plays king g1, I thought, okay, maybe I can just uh, play my king here, and maybe this is I can just take, and then I can run here. But black can I realized black can just start shouldering me this way. Like black can now go capture my pawn. So I didn't that's a draw. Like you could play it out, but I checked it out and it's a draw. So I was like, okay, so that doesn't work. So a4 doesn't work, and if black plays something like h3 here, I can play king f2, and then I realized in this position, black has this nice move of a5. And why is this a nice move? And this is a move that we have to remember in every other variation we look at next. Is once I saw a5, I also realized a pattern in this position, which is black has a nice trick up his sleeve, which will save the game for black. So after a5, you could play b5 or b takes a5. Doesn't matter. Let's say b takes a5. Black can play king h1, a6, and h2. The trick here is if I play a7, it's a stalemate. Black has no moves. Same goes with b5. If I play b5, the same sequence. b7, it's a stalemate, and I cannot play king g3. Then black can execute his plan with king g1 and queen, and black is winning. I was kind of bummed out. I thought I'm losing here. Like a5 is a stunner of a move. So I had to go back. I had to go back. King h2. Okay, king h2. I cannot play a4 because of a5, and I cannot play b5 because then black can maybe like play something like king g1, and if I play this, we get into the same line that we just saw, where black will run his king, like shoulder my king all the way there and capture these pawns, and then I have to come defend uh, all the way here and cocoon myself in this corner, whatever black was doing here, and try to draw the game from there. And I was like, okay, so this is completely not working. Um, so black wants to play it go to g1. So that's what I realized. I was like, okay, let me stop that. Let me just play king f2, stop the king. I know a5 is going to be a threat soon, but let me just put my king on f2. I'll block you from moving anywhere, because if you play king h3 now, you're blocking your own pawn, and maybe I can start queening. You could do this, but I think this time around I can just do anything. You can come in, but I can play this, and you are definitely not in the catching in the square of my pawn. So here, if you blunder with ab6, it's a draw, because if you draw a square from your pawn, black king can get into the next move. So in this position, you have to play something like a6. So even if this black king's not inside the square uh, of the pawn, and then you can just queen. So something to remember. But I realized this is black cannot run away like that and try to win. So king f2, coming back, king f2. I was like, okay, king f2 looks like it's working. So let's say black plays h3, and here a4 is going to lead to a5. So a5 is again a threat, and this is where, like, looking at a different variation, taking an idea out of that, and then like making sure that we would keep defending that, in like taking it in consideration all the other best moves that you calculate, really helps. So now I know I have to prevent a5. Something like king f1 is again going to be like a draw. Black is going to threaten this. You have to play king g1, h2. You have to prevent the pawn from queening, and black will start just running the king at that side and capturing that pawn. Again, you have to go defend. So I was like, okay, let me just defend a5. I'm gonna play b5. a4 is a draw, king f1 is a draw, then b5. Reason is, if you play a5 anyway, we win. We win in two ways. One, we just play b6, and black can now play king h1, trying the same stalemate trick. I could play b7, h2, I queen, but it's not a stalemate here, because my pawn is not on a4. My pawn on a3. Black has only one move here, legal move, which is a4, and black has to play a4. And then I can now play queen a8 and checkmate the black king, or queen b7 if you want, whatever you want to do. Now we just used black's own trick to defeat him. And the same ba6 also works here. The main reason being, after king h1, a7, and push the pawn, I can queen, and I can give a check and a mate, because I'm already queening from a square which is a check, and it mates the king. I don't have to worry about like that additional tempo, because although the black pawn does not exist. So this variation, I realized, okay, so b5 works, but again, black is not forced to play a5. Black can play king h1, and now I cannot play a4. Comes It keeps going back to the same idea, right? I cannot play a4 because a5, and it's a draw. Like if I play b6 h2, it's a draw. So I cannot play a4. So I have to again take a step back. What else can I play? I cannot play b6 because you're gonna take. So the only move left for me, which does not give up this control of g1, right? If I play king g3, black can play h2, and we saw it's just a different way to do the same thing. I cannot black come to g2 g1, so I had to play king f2, and then black can just play a5. It's the same thing, just in different move order, right? So if I cannot let black get control of g1, the only move I can play is king f1. So it's all logical. You know this is key square. You don't want to lose control. Then this has to be the best move. There's probably no other way for me to deal with it. And now black can need not commit any of the pawns. Black can play king h2, or black can play h2. A6 and a5 is just it's all gonna, like, come back into the same kind of structure. I'm gonna just look at two moves here. Um, like you could play. Let me show you the move that I wanted to. So there's just two variations, and I think we are done with this position. One is with king h2. I can now play a4. If I play king f2 again, it's the same position. So I'm gonna play a4. And the reason I can play a4 safely here is because this pawn is now blocked. It cannot move. You have to remember that. So I can play a4, and a5 won't work because there's like additional tempo that needs to be lost, which black cannot. And I can play b6. You can play king h1, b7, h2, and then here you cannot queen. You cannot queen. And the way to win here is nice. You have to play king e2. Because if you play king g1 now, I queen. You queen as well. But I can give a check. You move. I just take your queen. And then I walk myself over, take the pawn, and queen. As like once you know this, like that the king is far away, you can immediately go for this variation. It's a really simple and a nice variation. And the other move option that you have is also ba6, which kind of leads, let's say, to a similar thing. Let's say king h1 again, a7. This is just if you want to checkmate yourself, you can do it this way. If you play something like king g3, I still play a7. You can play h2, but I queen first, and you cannot queen because my queen is controlling this, and it's a winning position. And let's go back to this position with, instead of king h2, this is a nice variation. This is the last variation that I saw, which is if you play h2 here. What is the winning variation? If you play h2, take a second, like pause it. Like it took me a while to realize, oh, I have this move option available, because I thought here I this is still going to be a draw, because I thought like a4 and we fall into the same trap, a5, and it's a draw. I can whatever move I make, it's a draw. And then I just sat on this position, and then I realized, oh, I can play this tricky move, which is b6. And then I realized, okay, I think I finally solved this position, because b6 here, if black plays ab6, I play a4, right? Black plays b5. We are not going to take the pawn. If you take the pawn, it's a stalemate. There's no moves for black. You play a5, b4, a6. We queen first. And we queen with a check and a mate. And black cannot queen. I think this is the most exciting line out of all the lines we saw. If you have made it this far in the video, I think it's almost 30 minutes now. You made it this far into the video. This is probably the most exciting line. And to look at this line, and if you calculated this specific variation all the way from the starting position, you must be really good at chess. It took me a while. I had to set this position up on the board. I couldn't even visualize after a point. Um, yeah, and so instead of, if they saw the variation of h2 here, in this position, b6, what a move. Okay, let's recap. I know we have been throwing a lot of variations up in the air. Um, we'll just look at the solution variation, right? Starts with king d5, and after black takes on g2, black's plan is to just take on h3, step away, and start queening, right? We want to start preventing that now, because the other plans of moving these pawns forward or trying to when we started here trying to capture the pawn directly, we saw that it resulted in a draw. So we play king e4 to get closer to the black king, and black takes on h3, and but then we play king f3 to stop black from further advancing in his own plan, so that we can mobilize our own pawns and exchange it for the a7 pawn and queen. And black will now play king h2 to escape to g1, get out of the way of their own pawn and queen this pawn. But we are going to play king f2 to block that. We cannot move these pawns because we saw them, all those variations kind of end in a draw because of the move a5 from black, which resulted in a stalemate trick. So if h3, we cannot play a4 here. We have to play b5 because of the trick that we saw with a5 and the stalemate. And then here we saw that black has to play a move like king h1, and then we realized if we play a4, we'll result in the same a5 trick. So we have to make sure we don't give up the square of g1, the control of g1 or g2 for that matter, so that black cannot get out of the his own pawn's way. So we play king f1 to take control of it still. And here we saw the final two variations, which was the two last winning lines, which is king h2. If king h2, we play a4, and then because the pawn is blocked by the own king, black really cannot do much here. And if black plays something like king h1 after this, we just like black can even play h2 here. We can just play king f2 or whatever. Like we can force black to actually take our pawn. I don't think I showed this variation specifically, but black can now take, and we result in this kind of a checkmate pattern. The same pattern appears in with h2 as well. Let me show you that. Yeah, in this position, if you go to if you black plays h2, we also realize that we cannot play a4 because of a5, and we found this nice move of b6 takes a4 b5, not a takes b5, but just play a5, the same pattern that we saw. And then we just queen before the black's pawn. We checkmate the black king. What a position. It took me a lot of time to solve. I'm pretty sure we made it to 30 minutes in this video already. If you watch this video all the way through here, thanks for that. Thanks for the patience there. But if you that this is the position. I really like this endgame position. A lot of nuances and a lot of things to consider. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yeah, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more endgame content. I'm gonna keep making more endgame videos in the near future. Yeah, catch you guys in the next one.